Yo everyone, welcome back to another Tips and Tech to Save Your Neck. This time we're going to be in the Dawnbreaker, and I'm going to be running through some of the pools that are kind of dangerous, as this dungeon is pretty unforgiving as a whole, and then I'm going to be running through some of the bosses and things that you can do to keep your party safe and sound, and get some more of that IO pumped into your veins for this one. So without further ado, let's fly into the dungeon. Alright everyone, so heading into the first pool here, you're going to see me roar in, and then I'm going to start pre-hotting people as the damage ramps up pretty aggressively with this Ritualist in the first pool, as he is going to use his Tormenting Ray, a channel on 2 people in your group. So if you're the healer, just be prepared with some heavy heals to make sure that those people are going to be topped up quickly after the damage. And you're going to see a couple curses going out there on people. As a druid, a nice little tip is that you're going to be able to use your shapeshift to remove that curse from you, as it counts as a snare, and shapeshifting inherently has that capability. And then that'll allow you to save your dispel as the healer to use on the Stygian seed from the Ritualist, as you'll see here as I dispel that Demon Hunter there. And if you have any free globals at the end as a class with any type of soothe on an enrage effect, you can use it on these curse blades to just remove that little attack speed steroid that they get and help your tank out. Okay, so we're at the first boss of the dungeon now, and if you're the healer in this situation, you're going to be able to crank out some damage at the start, as not too much happens. There's just going to be one obsidian beam. It's just going to be a small amount of damage on the group and a decent amount on the tank, nothing to worry about. However, again, if you're the healer, this is a good spot to start preparing some healing, as the first Burning Shadow debuff is going to happen shortly after this beam finishes. And you'll see I'm ready to dispel, and then I'm going to top people up pretty quickly. You'll also notice that I'm stacked with a ranged player there to stack those collapsing night debuffs, and that's just to help ensure that we've created space so that when the future obsidian beams come out, we have space to move. And you'll see on this next Burning Shadow debuff, as the healer, I am going to use my Lumithar trinket. It's a great spot for that. As well as any player in the group, this is a good spot to use a personal defensive that you have. It's going to just help make sure you don't rot out to that Burning Shadow debuff that once the healer has dispelled it. And also, as the Obsidian Beam explosion happens to the group, it's just to help make sure that you're easily topped up and safe when that combo can happen, as that's the deadly part of the fight here. And if you're a druid, good place to convoke, a good place to trank, use any of those healing cooldowns that you need. Alright, so you've made it to the first mini-boss now, and he's not terribly difficult by himself. However, that can change depending on what you decide to pull with it. Now, as you can see, that first debuff that's gone out on the Demon Hunter there is the dangerous part of the mini-boss. It's called Abyssal Blast. It's about an 8-second dot that's going to tick fairly hard, so just make sure as the healer you're prepared to heal through that. Otherwise, there's not too much going on. Just watch your tank, listen, or be prepared to use an external if necessary on him. Otherwise, you can spend free globals, as I'm doing here, to use DPS on all these mobs. And otherwise, if you're a class that has a soothe, as you just saw me do there, I soothed the tactician in this pool. It's just an enrage effect that makes it a little safer for the tank here as well. Alright, so we're on the first large pool outside of the church here, where the first mini-boss is. You can do this pool before or after that mini-boss is dead, whatever your group decides is best. There's a mistake here that I'd like to showcase that my group made when we did this. The Manifested Shadows can cast their Hail, and you'll see here in a second, anyone on a ramp or stairs, any surface that is not flat, you will see them start to clip through, and you'll not be able to fully see the detail there. They can also sometimes be completely invisible, and it can be very deadly and get your players killed. So just make sure when you're fighting those types of mobs, you stand on extremely level surfaces as best as you can. In this pool as well, it makes it difficult if you're playing on that ramp there, because it can cause LOS issues for the healers or for DPS as well, and it just makes it kind of difficult for everyone. So just make sure you maintain that level surface. There's also a few kicks in this pool. Make sure you're helping with those if you can, or you can use Incapacitating Roar as a druid, or your Ursul's Vortex in combination with your Typhoon to stop some of the casts. And there's also a Tactician in this pool that you can use your Soothe on again to stop an enrage effect, just to help your tank out. Here we are at the second mini-boss for the dungeon. This is where you're going to want to send your second Lust for the dungeon. This is a pretty difficult pull all around and is pretty dangerous, so it's a good place to use it. First, you'll notice that the Abyssal Blast debuff is still there. All 3 mini-bosses in this dungeon possess that. It's a pretty dangerous debuff, so make sure as the healer you're keeping an eye out on that person and topping them up. Next, you'll see this Dark Orb traveling down the gut of the alleyway. That is a dangerous ability as well. It's going to do group-wide damage based on where it explodes at the time. So the further it travels before it explodes, it will do significantly less damage than if it were to explode into a wall right next to you. So always make sure as you see that player right there sending that orb down the alleyway, you do that every time with it to prevent your group from wiping. As well, there's going to be casters in this pool. Make sure you're helping with kicks on them if you can, or any CC to stop the cast. There's also another tactician here. If you're a player that has a soothe effect, make sure you're using that as well. As the healer, you can also use externals on people with the Abyssal Blast debuff here to help them survive the combo of the Dark Orb exploding at the same time as they have that ticking debuff, or I recommend making sure that you let the players know that they should be using their personal defenses at that time as well. So now you're on the third mini-boss of the dungeon. This pull is a little less difficult than the previous pull you did with Lust, but a little more difficult than the first mini-boss pull you did. Similar to Goldilocks and the Three Bears, this difficulty is just right. So you're going to notice that there are a couple casters in this pool. As before, make sure you're helping kick those or use CC if you're able to. There's also another tactician here. Again, if you have that soothe ability, make sure you're helping out the tank by using that and reduce some of his incoming damage. This mini boss also is going to possess the Abyssal Blast, as I had mentioned before. Make sure you're keeping those players topped up, having them use their own personal defensives, and if needed, you can use your own externals such as Ironbark or other things like that on them as well. And there's going to be a pulsing AoE damage from this mini-boss known as Shadowy Decay. That can overlap with that Abyssal Blast dot as well. So make sure that if you have the two of those, again, use a defensive there. And if you're the healer, make sure you're prepared to do heavy healing to them. It's a good place to use your group-wide cooldowns as well, such as Mass Barrier or AMZ from a DK. And if you're the healer, like the Druid, you can make sure you use Convoke or Tranquility here to help keep people topped up. Alright, so you're on the second boss now, and there's a number of things that can be dangerous to your party here. First, you're going to see these ads that are casting on random players. Make sure that you kick them or CC them to stop that from happening. Next, you'll see this Dark Orb. Shoot it down the gut of the alleyway. It's going to do some group-wide damage. At least once or twice in this fight, that orb explosion will overlap with this Shadowy Decay pulsing damage you see here. This is the most deadly part of the encounter, so make sure that you are saving personal defensives or group-wide defensives or cooldowns for that overlap to survive it, such as my Lumathar trinket that you see there, or Convoke or Tranquility. I could have used Barkskin if I felt like I needed it. As far as group-wide defensives, you could use Darkness or Mass Barrier or AMZ to survive it. And you're going to see more ads spawning, another Dark Orb there as well. Shortly here, you're going to see the tank hit. It's going to put a large circle around him. Make sure you get out of that, as it will do a large amount of damage that if it doesn't kill you, it will fear you as well. Okay, now we're on to the Architect pool towards the end of the dungeon. This is an extremely dangerous pool, as it will use a similar effect to the Ritualists in the dungeon from before, where it will channel a beam onto two players. This ability does a high amount of damage, so make sure that if you are targeted by it, use a personal defensive, or you have another player make sure that they use one on themselves as well. You could also use things such as your Lumathar trinket here or a healing cooldown to help it get through that. It's going to spawn some ads. They don't do a whole lot, but do make sure that you're helping CC or kick them if possible. But as the healer, make sure that you have healing prepared on all your players in case they are targeted by this Tormenting Ray. It does go on 2 people at a time, and it will channel for about 5 seconds. Here we are on the final boss of the dungeon. The first part here is pretty simple, not too much going on. You're going to see me pick up a bomb. It's going to do ticking damage the entire duration I hold it until I throw it at the boss. Next, just dodge some of those webs. After that, you're going to see a player get targeted by a wave that can target anyone in the party besides the healer or tank. Just make sure you're not in it. It's going to do some decent damage, and it's going to stun you for a few seconds. If you're the healer in this key, make sure that you're preparing for the erosive spray that's about to go off. It does a pretty heavy amount of damage up front, and it also leaves a dot on the party that will tick for around 7 or 8 seconds, and it's going to hurt pretty well the whole time. So just make sure you're having your players use defensives on that, or if you need to, you can use a healing cooldown to help support yourself through that section. So as you can see, we're finishing up the first part of the final boss. Now as he flies away and spends time getting to his final platform, we're actually going to take that time to spend killing some mobs for percent in the dungeon. As long as you make it to a safe spot before your buff falls off, you are okay. What we're going to do is opt to go into this balcony room and kill a bunch of mobs. Now, this pack is pretty safe for most of us. It's really just dangerous for the tank. So just make sure you're keeping healing on him, use any defensives you need on him, and keep him alive. And just help kick that one caster, and everything will be safe from there. Now, if you're the healer, one thing to watch out for is when the final boss lands at his platform, he's going to cast that acidic eruption. However, all it's going to do from distance is a small amount of damage to the party, as you'll see the group here start to tick shortly. As the healer, just make sure you have some form of small cooldown rolling or shielding people if you can, or any hots you can throw out on the party. And before you go to leave the platform, just make sure you ask them to use a personal defensive or use any healing to keep themselves topped up while you fly to the last boss, as you will be taking damage the whole time you fly there. Now, once you land, what you need to do is make sure that everybody gets to the platform before the boss is kicked from his cast. If you don't, it's going to count as no one being there, and it's going to do an explosion, and it's going to kill your entire group and wipe the key. So we just finished count, we make sure everyone lands safely, and then we finally interrupt the eruption, and you can continue the final boss as usual. So now that you've reached the final platform of the final boss, there's only one key difference to make note of, and it's the strands. It's going to target two separate players, they're going to get a circle around them, and they're going to run out somewhere. They're going to take initial damage from the hit, damage while they're getting off of the web, and damage while they're snapping it. It's a good place for them to use personal defensives. The Acid Wave, the Expel Webs, and the Erosive Spray are all still there as a mechanic in the second phase, and they do the same thing. As a note, for Resto Druids in this last phase, whenever your group decides to use Lust, you can opt to tell your players not to use personal defensives during that, as if you have your healing rolling with Hots, it's very hard for us to die during Lust with Rot damage. A better place to use them is against the Strands, as they take heavier burst damage, and there's not much Druids can do to prevent that, aside from maybe a Lumathar Trinket or an external used on them. Hey everyone, thanks for hanging out to the end of another tips and tech to save your neck video. If you were looking forward to a dungeon but haven't seen it yet, don't worry, it's going to be coming soon. If you have any questions about anything you saw in the video, feel free to ask me or talk about it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.